All right, I know how this title sounds. I almost didn't post it, but this story's been eating me alive, and maybe if I write it down, I can stop thinking about her, or whatever the hell she was. I'll start from the beginning. I was 27 at the time. This was in late September 2023, and I'd been working the graveyard shift at RS Radio, a forgotten independent station hidden on the third floor of a rundown building in the South Loop. It was one of those jobs that sounds cool when you tell people, yeah, I'm a radio host. But the truth? It was miserable. Just me, in a concrete box with ancient equipment, flickering overhead lights, and this constant smell of mildew baked into the drywall. I played old playlists, took 0 calls, and watched the digital clock crawl toward 8 a.m. I didn't even want the job. I only took it because I was broke. I had just failed out of a freelance music production gig. My girlfriend left me the same week. My bank account was dipping below 0, and I couldn't even afford to crash at my cousin's place anymore. This station was the last option, and even that, I was about to quit. I had typed up a resignation letter the night before. I was ready to hit print and leave it on the manager's desk. But that next morning, Tuesday, September 19th, 2023, everything shifted. It had been raining all night. That thick, heavy Chicago rain that soaks the city and makes everything feel a little off. I was alone in the booth, halfway through my third bitter cup of vending machine coffee, when I heard the door buzz. That was strange in itself. No one ever visited during the night shift. I froze. The station door required a security fob. There were only 2 people on file with access during my hours. Me and the building's janitor, who only worked Fridays. So the fact that someone was coming in, that alone had my heartbeat kicking up a notch. Then I heard her footsteps, slow, wet against linoleum. And when she stepped into the light, I swear the air around me got warmer. She was soaked from the rain, not in a drenched, disheveled way, but in a way that somehow made her look intentional. Her red dress clung to her body like it was painted on. Long, dark hair framed her face, dripping gently onto her collarbones. Her makeup hadn't run at all. In fact, she looked perfect. I was stunned. I couldn't even speak. Then she smiled, like she knew the effect she was having on me, and said, "Hi, I'm Lila. I'm here to shadow the overnight host." I blinked like an idiot. "Sorry, what?" She laughed, this soft, confident laugh. "I applied last week. I'm starting the internship program. I know it's weird timing, but they said I could shadow the graveyard shift for training." Now here's the thing. I didn't remember any email, no memos, and our station was so short-staffed. We hadn't had a real intern in over a year. But in that moment, staring at her, I didn't care. "Yeah," I said. "Right. You're in the right place. Come in." She sat beside me in the booth. The console lights cast this soft amber hue across her face. Her dress slowly started drying, but for a while she remained wet, in this cinematic movie scene kind of way. Her neckline was damp. Her thighs glistened, and I couldn't stop looking at her. She asked about the equipment, about our outdated software, about how I stacked ads between music blocks. But even as she asked, she leaned in close. Too close. Her perfume, this sweet floral note with something darker under it, was impossible to ignore. At one point, her hand brushed mine. I looked up. She didn't move away. "You're cute," she said, then immediately looked down at the screen again like she hadn't just dropped that. My throat went dry. I couldn't focus. And then, as if on cue, the power went out. Total darkness. The station's power grid was old and temperamental. Every few weeks it would flicker off for a few seconds. Normally I'd scramble to reboot the system, but this time I just sat there, feeling her hand find mine in the dark. The backup generator kicked in. Lights flickered back on. Our eyes locked. I kissed her. It was fast. Hungry. Like we'd both been waiting for a reason to cross that line. Her lips were warm and soft. Her hands gripped the back of my neck. I stood, pulling her up with me, and we stumbled toward the back lounge. A crusty little room with a torn couch and a mini fridge that smelled like expired creamer. I didn't care. We didn't stop. Her dress came off with one tug. Her body was flawless. Toned, glowing, every curve exactly where it should be. Her skin was still damp from the rain, and as I traced my fingers along her waist, she shivered. "I shouldn't be doing this," she whispered, teasing, but she didn't stop. We were tangled up on that couch for what felt like hours. The rain didn't stop pounding against the windows. The static hum of the emergency lights added this surreal energy to the whole moment, like we were in a movie that wasn't supposed to end well. But I didn't think about that then. All I remember is how close she felt, how real it all was, how I didn't want the night to end. When we finally slowed down, she curled up beside me, her head on my chest, and I just stared at the water dripping down the glass. "You're different," I told her, and she said, without even blinking, "You have no idea. I don't think I've ever had a night like that. Not before, not since." We didn't sleep, just lay there on that dusty, beat-up couch in the lounge of RS Radio, like it was a damn king-sized bed in some penthouse suite. I remember running my fingers down her back, the way her skin felt cool in some places and warm in others. She had this tiny freckle under her left shoulder blade. I don't know why I remember that. I just do. "Do you believe in fate?" she asked at some point. Her voice was low, soft, almost sleepy. I laughed. "Number. But I'm starting to think maybe I should." She didn't respond immediately, just traced slow circles on my chest with her fingertip, her wet hair drying against my skin. "Maybe some things are supposed to happen," she said, after a long pause, "even if they feel like mistakes." I didn't know what to make of that, but the way she said it, half hypnotized, like she was talking from the bottom of a dream, I didn't want to question it. I didn't want to ruin the moment. By the time the sun started bleeding through the clouds, we were still in that lounge. Her red dress was tossed across the mixing table. Her heels had ended up behind the fridge somehow. I remember watching her slip back into them, like she'd done it 1,000 times before. Slow, elegant, purposeful, like a dancer. "What are you doing after this?" I asked, half joking, half hoping. She turned, smiling, brushing her hair back from her face. "Same thing I always do, wait around for the night." And just like that, she was gone. I didn't see her for the next 2 shifts. I thought maybe I'd hallucinated the whole thing, that the stress, the loneliness, the isolation of that radio station had finally gotten to me. But then, on Friday night, September 22nd, she was back. This time, she wasn't wet. She walked in wearing a white crop top, high-waisted jeans, and a denim jacket that somehow made her look even hotter than before. Her lips were glossed, her eyeliner perfect, like she'd walked off the set of a perfume ad. "Miss me?" she said, sliding into the chair beside mine. I stared at her. "Where the hell were you?" "Watching." "Watching what?" "You." She leaned in and kissed me, slowly, deliberately, like we hadn't missed a single moment between Tuesday and now. That night, she didn't wait for the power to go out. She pulled me into the dark room next to the booth, a tiny soundproof chamber filled with old tapes and dusty shelves, and dropped to her knees. I could barely breathe. The whole thing felt like a fever dream. Later, she climbed onto the old editing desk, pulled me into her again, and whispered things in my ear that I'd never heard a woman say before. Words that were both filthy and poetic. She touched me like she knew me, like she had memorized my body in another life. And afterward, when we lay tangled on that pile of outdated cassette boxes, she whispered something strange. "You're not scared of me, are you?" I blinked at her. Why the hell would I be scared of you? She just smiled and kissed me again. The next few weeks were electric. Every shift she'd appear. Never at the same time, never with the same look. Sometimes dressed like a grunge-era goddess, sometimes in a sleek corporate pencil skirt with heels that made my heart stop. One time she wore nothing but one of my hoodies and panties. It was like a private fantasy on loop. We didn't just have sex. We connected, talked, laughed, fell asleep together in the worst places. The floor, the cramped equipment closet, even under my desk while an old playlist looped. But something strange was happening too. I started noticing that no one else ever saw her. I tried mentioning her to our station manager, Lisa, once during her afternoon shift to hand off. "Hey, what did you think of the new intern, Lila?" She frowned. "We haven't had an intern since 2022, dude." "What are you talking about?" I laughed it off. Maybe she just didn't know. Maybe Lila was hired off the books, or just hadn't been filed into the system yet. But it started eating at me. And then there was the equipment. Every time Lila showed up, something would glitch. Not break. Not exactly. Just shift. Recordings would erase themselves. Audio files would corrupt mid-play. Our security cams would go dark between 1 a.m. and 4 a.m. And only during those hours. At first, I didn't think too much about it. The station was ancient, after all. Everything was old, patched up with duct tape and prayer. But as the weeks went on, I started feeling something I hadn't felt in a long time. Paranoia. Still, I couldn't stop seeing her. She was addictive. Her body was perfect. Her mind was razor sharp. She'd quote obscure literature one moment and whisper the filthiest things in the next. One night, she brought me a cup of hot chocolate in a ceramic mug. Not a takeout cup, a real mug. And said she made it at her place, even though she never told me where she lived. When I asked, she just said, "I'm not really from around here." Then smiled and added, "But I'm always nearby." That same night, she left scratches down my back that didn't heal for a week. I started dreaming about her. Weird dreams, vivid, hyper-real. In one, she was standing naked in my bedroom, but her eyes were glowing. Not like demons or horror movies, just unnatural, like twin moons caught in her skull. In another dream, she stood in the middle of the RS booth, surrounded by floating cassette tapes that spun around her like orbiting planets. But I didn't feel afraid. Not yet. I felt possessed, in love, obsessed, drunk on every inch of her. Her scent, her voice, the way she'd disappear right before dawn, every time, no matter where we were, like she was connected to the night itself. And every time she left me there alone, I'd swear to God she'd been real, because my lips would still taste like her. My skin would still smell like her perfume. And sometimes, I'm not kidding, the imprint of her body would still be on the couch cushion beside me. I stopped checking the clock when she came around. Time just didn't matter anymore. It didn't tick like it used to. Hours would stretch and snap back like rubber bands when Lila was near. I'd blink, and 3 songs would pass. Look away, and a whole segment would vanish. But she always made it feel okay. Made me feel like I was exactly where I was supposed to be. I started to live for the stormy nights. There was something about the rain that made her different. More sensual, more intense. Like it charged her. Made her body hum when I touched her. The second night it poured, She walked in, soaking wet again, just like that first night, wearing nothing but a white oversized tee that clung to her body so perfectly I forgot how to breathe. "No umbrella?" I teased, even though my throat was dry. She smiled, stepping slowly into the studio, water dripping from her hair, her skin glistening under the red on AR sign glow. "I like the rain," she said. "It makes everything quiet." Then she climbed onto me right there in the booth, straddling my lap, while the mic levels peaked. The playlist played on, but I couldn't tell you what was on. All I remember is the sound she made when I kissed down her neck. Soft, desperate, like the air had been knocked out of her. She pulled off that shirt, baring herself, her body flawless in the low light, and in that moment, I didn't care if I was hallucinating or losing my mind. I didn't care if the station burned down around us. I just needed her. She started coming every night. Sometimes she'd bring food. Strange things, though. Once, a red velvet cupcake from a bakery that closed years ago. Another night, a full bottle of wine with no label, no cork, just sealed and cold, as if chilled in a cellar. And her stories. She'd talk about music, about songs I'd never heard before. She'd hum these haunting little melodies that felt half familiar. Sometimes when she sang, the lights would flicker, just a pulse, like the whole place was breathing with her. I was in deep, too deep. One night I brought her back to my apartment. It was almost 2 a.m. The streets were wet from rain, glowing gold and red from traffic lights. She didn't say anything during the drive, just played with the radio dial, cycling through static, until she found an old soul station that seemed to come from nowhere. My place wasn't much. A one-bedroom off Belmont Avenue, 2nd floor, tiny balcony with half a view of the lake. But she walked in like she'd been there before. She touched the framed photos on my shelf like she was remembering them. Asked about my childhood, my parents, my old guitar. I never played anymore. Then she kissed me, slow, urgent, and pulled me toward the couch. It was raw that night, desperate, like she needed me more than ever, like I was her anchor to something slipping away. She cried after. I held her, confused, her tears soaking into my chest. "I don't want you to forget me," she whispered. "You won't, will you?" "Of course not," I said. "Why would I?" But she didn't answer, just pressed her face against my neck and breathed me in like she was memorizing me. I woke up alone. No note, no text. The front door was still locked from the inside. Her side of the bed wasn't even warm, like she'd vanished the second I closed my eyes. But there was something else. My bathroom mirror, fogged over, even though I hadn't showered, had something written in it. 4 words, drawn with a fingertip. "Don't stay past midnight." I stood there staring at it for so long, the letters started dripping like tears. Things started slipping after that. The station felt colder at night, even with the heat cranked up. Songs would queue up on their own. Songs I hadn't added. Old jazz from the 1940s, doo-wop from the 50s, instrumentals that didn't exist in the digital archive. I'd hear whispers in the headphones when no one was talking. Once, I swear to God, I saw someone, or something, watching me from the booth's soundproof window. A figure, barely there, just long enough to blink. When I ran to check, the hallway was empty, and Lila, she changed too. Not all at once, not like a switch, just little things. Her touch colder some nights, her body lighter, like I was holding on to vapor. She'd look over my shoulder sometimes, mid-kiss, like something was watching us. Her eyes would go glassy, her voice distant. But I was in love, addicted, blinded. I kept going back. The dreams grew worse. Now, they weren't just sexual or strange. They were violent. I'd dream of being buried beneath cassette tapes, of screaming into a dead mic, of Lila standing in the rain, naked and bleeding, reaching for me but melting into the pavement before I could touch her. Once, I woke up to find my fingernails cracked and bleeding, like I'd been clawing at something in my sleep. I started Googling her name. Lila, RS Radio, Chicago. Nothing. No records, no social media, no LinkedIn, no college transcripts. I checked our internal files. Nothing. I asked Lisa again. She said I was scaring her. But I couldn't stop. Every time I thought about leaving, transferring to another station, even quitting altogether, she'd appear again. So beautiful it hurt to look at her. So real I'd forget everything else. She'd kiss me, touch me, tell me stories in the dark, wrap her arms around me and whisper, "This is where you belong." And for a moment I believed it, until I came home one night and found every photo in my apartment turned upside down. And scratched into my bedroom door were 5 more words. She died here in 1994. I stared at the scratches on the door for what felt like hours. She died here in 1994. My mind refused to accept it. I kept blinking, waiting for the words to vanish. Maybe it was a prank. Maybe I sleepwalked. Maybe... But no, it was real. I ran my fingers along the gouges. They were deep, jagged, as if someone had carved them with a knife. The paint had flaked off. The wood beneath splintered and raw. And the worst part, the letters were wet, fresh. But I hadn't been home since 8 p.m. the night before. I didn't go to the station that night. I stayed home. I turned off my phone. I turned on every light, sat in the living room with a baseball bat like some paranoid maniac, trying to tell myself I was still sane. But that was the first night in weeks she didn't come. And it killed me. I missed her. I hated how much I missed her. The silence was louder than anything I'd ever heard. My apartment felt like a coffin. Every creak in the walls sounded like footsteps. Every shadow looked like her silhouette. I sat up all night, and when the morning came, I found my bedroom door wide open. The scratches were gone. The next night, I went back to the station. I told myself it was for work, for the routine, for the paycheck. But I knew why I was really there. I wanted to see her again, and she didn't disappoint. She showed up just past midnight, like always, soaked to the skin, white dress, no shoes, her hair dripping rainwater down her collarbones. "You stayed away," she whispered. I didn't answer. I just looked at her. She looked different. Not worse, just sharper. Her cheekbones more defined, her eyes deeper, her skin more translucent, almost glowing under the red lights of the studio. And still, she was the most beautiful woman I had ever seen. I was scared, I said honestly. She nodded slowly, walking toward me. Her dress clung to her body like wet silk. I could see the full shape of her. Toned legs, slim waist, perfectly curved hips, full breasts, pressing against the soaked fabric. "You shouldn't be," she said. "You're mine." Then she kissed me, hard, desperate. That night was different. It wasn't slow, it wasn't tender, it was primal, urgent. Like we were running out of time, like we were both drowning, and the only way to breathe was through each other. We didn't even make it out of the booth. She tore off my shirt, climbed on top of the console, and pulled me between her legs. My headphones still dangled from my neck. The mic was still live. The board lit up like a Christmas tree, matters redlining from our gasps and moans. And then the lights flickered, just once, and the song that had been playing, some new indie track, shifted mid-chorus into something old, something not in the playlist. It was a scratchy 1940s style ballad, female vocals, echoed like it was being played from a vinyl on a gramophone. Lila didn't stop. In fact, she moaned louder, bit into my shoulder, climbed harder against me, and as we moved together, that old song filled the air. It sounded like her voice. When it was over, we lay tangled together in the booth. The song ended. Dead silence. Then the on-air light flickered off, even though I never touched the board. "Who was that singing?" I asked, breathless. She didn't answer, just stared at the ceiling, eyes glassy, chest rising and falling. "Lila?" I said again. Finally, she whispered, "That was me." I started looking into the station's archives. RS 103.5 had been around a long time, longer than I realized. It wasn't just a local indie station. It used to be huge back in the 40s and 50s, broadcast jazz and swing all across Chicago. I asked around, emailed a couple of old-timers who'd worked there decades ago. One name kept coming up in weird conversations: Lila Hartley, a jazz singer, regular guest. Hosted a midnight show during wartime for lonely soldiers tuning in from overseas. Called it The Velvet Hour. Sultry voice, cult following. Disappeared in 1994. Rumors said she died in the station, electrocuted during a freak storm when the equipment shorted. No autopsy, no public funeral, just vanished. I found a photo online, blurry, black and white, but unmistakably her. Same face, same hair, same impossible beauty. But there was one difference: her eyes. In the photo, her eyes were empty, like they'd already seen hell and come back with a smile. That night, I tried not to go in. I really did. But around 11:45, the rain started again, hard. Sheets of water against my window, thunder like someone dragging chains through the sky. And my body, it just moved, like it belonged to her now. I got in the car, drove to the station, didn't even remember turning the key in the ignition. She was already waiting in the booth, naked, soaked, smiling. "I knew you'd come," she said, and spread her legs like it was nothing. No hesitation, no fear, just hunger. And I gave in again, because I needed her now, and somewhere, deep in my bones, I knew she needed me, too. Afterward, I sat in the booth alone, staring at the mic. She'd left again, always gone before sunrise, never stayed past the storm. I rubbed my face, my eyes, trying to make sense of what this had become. And then I noticed the mic was live again. The recording light was red, but the booth was silent, until I heard her voice, soft and trembling, whisper through the headphones, "Don't let them take me. Don't let them take me." Her voice came through the headphones like a whisper from inside my skull. I froze in the booth. The on-air light glowed red above the mic. I hadn't touched anything, and yet she was live, broadcasting. I checked the feed. The studio wasn't playing music, wasn't airing commercials. There was only that dead air hum, the sound of faint static, and the occasional pop from the old wiring. And then her voice returned, clearer, more urgent. "They're coming for me, for us. Don't trust the silence." Then silence. Total, suffocating silence. I yanked the headphones off. My heart felt like it was going to claw its way out of my chest. I scanned the room. Nothing. Just the comforting hum of the old mixing board, the blinking standby light on the auxiliary console. No Lila, no voice, no shadow behind the glass. But I knew she had been there, and she wasn't talking to the audience. She was talking to me. I didn't go home that morning. Instead, I pulled open every cabinet in the station's storage room, searching through dusty boxes, ancient files, and yellowing newspapers from decades ago. I found old program schedules from the 40s, handwritten logs, photos of former hosts, and in one file, I found a station incident report, barely legible. Date, April 12th, 1994. Time, 12:03 a.m. Incident: equipment malfunction during live broadcast. Notes: unknown voltage surge. Fatality. Subject: Hartley. L. Body unrecovered. Electrical systems compromised. Studio sealed for investigation. No follow-up report. No police file. No closure. Just a studio sealed in silence for 30 years. I went back to the booth around 2 a.m. She wasn't there. Not physically, at least. But the smell of rain lingered in the air. Wet leaves, drenched hair, lightning static clinging to the walls like perfume. I sat in the chair and closed my eyes, headphones dangling from one ear, and that's when the board lit up. Red, green, yellow, not flashing, pulsing, like a heartbeat. And then I heard her voice again, but not live. This time, it was a recording. It wasn't from tonight. It wasn't even recent. The tape sounded ancient, warped, faded, but it was her, singing. I'll wait for you, until the air runs dry. The melody was beautiful, soulful, desperate, like a woman singing into the dark, praying someone would answer. I listened to it 3 times. The 3rd time, I wept. I don't know why. She came back the next night. Not through the mic. In the flesh. Or at least something like it. She was already waiting when I got to the station. In the booth. Wearing a deep red silk robe that clung to her curves like it had been painted on. Her skin shimmered faintly in the red glow of the studio lights. Every inch of her soaked from the ongoing downpour outside. Her hair was messier tonight. Wild. Her eyes darker. More intense. Hungrier. She didn't say anything. Just undid the knot on her robe and let it slide to the floor. Underneath, she wore nothing but a thin black choker and the same smile she always gave me before she devoured me whole. This time, we didn't even wait to shut the door. She pushed me back against the console and climbed into my lap, her hands clutching my face, her hips grinding in desperate circles. The rain hit the windows like gunfire. Thunder cracked above the station like a warning bell. And in the middle of it all, her body, her scent, her moans filling the mic. I felt something cold crawl across my back. A finger. Number A breath. I looked up. There was no one else in the room, but I could feel something watching us. I tried to ignore it, but Lila stopped, mid-thrust. She pulled back, eyes wide, lips trembling. They're here. I sat up. What? She backed away from me, naked and terrified. Don't speak. Don't move. Don't let them in. The lights in the booth shut off. Every last one. We were plunged into total blackness, and then the sound came. Static. Pure, ear-splitting, violent static pouring through every speaker in the building. The kind of noise that made your teeth hurt and your eyes water. I covered my ears. She screamed. And then, just like that, silence. When I opened my eyes, I was alone in the booth. The board was cold. The console was off. The recording light dead. No trace of Lila. No robe. No footprints. No moisture. No smell of rain. Nothing. Like she'd never been there. I finally went to the station manager the next day. Told him something was wrong with the power system. That I'd been hearing things on the feed. That the booth equipment was acting haunted. He laughed. Told me it always did that when it rained. That the place was old. Built before proper shielding. Ghost in the machine. He joked. I didn't laugh. I asked him about Lila Hartley. His smile froze. The name clearly struck something. You found her file? He asked. I nodded. He took a long drag from his cigarette and said, everyone who stays past midnight hears her eventually. Just don't answer if she calls, and never say her name on the mic. I asked why. He leaned in close and whispered, because she's always listening. That night I almost didn't go back, but I did. Because no matter how scared I was, I missed her. And some sick part of me didn't care if she was dead. Because when I was with her, I felt more alive than I ever had. And that terrified me more than anything else. I didn't sleep that night. Not because I was scared, because I was possessed. Not literally, I think, but mentally, emotionally, physically. My skin still smelled like her. My hands still trembled with the memory of her touch. And her voice, those last words, kept echoing in my skull. Don't let them take me. Who the hell was them? I went to work the next day like a zombie. Everyone noticed I looked wrecked. But it wasn't just fatigue. It was obsession. It was confusion. It was something primal I didn't know how to name. After my shift, I stayed behind. I pulled the audio logs from the night before. I needed to prove to myself that what happened actually happened. Maybe I was going crazy. But as I scanned through the files, I noticed something strange. The system had deleted most of the audio. The entire block from 11:45 p.m. to 3:06 a.m. Gone. Wiped clean. Only a single clip remained. Exactly 6 seconds long. I played it. The screen flickered. The studio lights dimmed. Just slightly. And her voice, distorted and distant, whispered, "Help me, Adam." My blood went cold. I never told her my name. That night, the rain came early. Around 9 p.m., the clouds opened up and dumped torrential water across the city. Thunder cracked so loud it shook the windows. The air smelled metallic, like something old and forgotten. I stood in the break room, staring at the red-on-air light glowing through the hallway. She was calling me, not literally, not out loud, but in my mind, in my skin, in the ache that had formed somewhere between lust and despair. I went in. She was waiting in the booth, same as always. White dress, no shoes, wet, dripping, perfect. But her eyes were different, not glowing, not empty, just scared. "Lila," I said, "what's happening to me?" She looked at me with those huge, tearful eyes and whispered, "I wasn't supposed to fall in love." My throat tightened. "What are you talking about?" She walked toward me, slow, her dress sticking to her curves. Rainwater pooled beneath her bare feet. They told me I could visit one night, just to remember. But you saw me. You touched me. That wasn't supposed to happen. My heart raced. Who are they? She shook her head, already crying. The ones who keep me on the other side. The ones who wait, who feed, who punish. She grabbed me then, hard, desperate, and kissed me like it was her last breath. And I let it happen. Again. Because even now, even with horror starting to bloom behind her eyes, she was the most intoxicating thing I had ever tasted. Afterward, we lay on the floor of the sound booth, tangled together, sticky with sweat and rain and something else I didn't want to name. She rested her head on my chest. "They know I stayed too long," she whispered. "They're coming for me." I held her tighter. "Let them come. I'll protect you." She laughed. A soft, hopeless sound. "You can't fight them, Adam. You don't understand what I did to be here." And then she told me. She died on purpose, not in an accident. She wasn't electrocuted by faulty wiring during a storm. That was the story, the cover-up. She killed herself. Right there, in the station, on air. I slit my wrists with the edge of a broken record. She said, voice hollow. During my final broadcast, while the song played, while everyone listened. Why? Because I was in love with a man who didn't love me back. Because I wanted to become the voice people never forgot. And because something promised me I could live forever if I died in the sound. The words hit me like a punch to the chest. "You made a deal?" She nodded. "They told me I could stay, as long as no one loved me again." because love is the only thing stronger than death. And then she looked at me, into me, and said, "You ruined it." The lights exploded. Literally, the overheads burst like gunshots, showering us in glass. The board lit up on its own. The screens flashed code I couldn't read. The air turned cold, like ice in my lungs. And then the screaming started. Not hers, not mine, something else. A sound that came from the speakers, the floor, the vents, like the walls themselves were in agony. I grabbed her hand and yanked her to her feet. "We have to go." She didn't move. She just stared at the booth window. And I saw it too. A figure, black, twisted, wrong, watching us from the hallway. Its face wasn't a face, just a blank void where a mouth should be. Its hands were bone-white claws. Its body dripped static, like it was made of broken TV signals and blood. She whimpered. "They found me." And then the studio door slammed shut, locked from the outside. The studio door wouldn't budge. I slammed my shoulder into it again and again, screaming, cursing, pleading. Behind me, Lila stood frozen, her dress clinging to her soaked skin, her eyes fixed on the glass where that thing had appeared. Gone now, but its presence still lingered like smoke after a fire. Sharp, suffocating, wrong. "Open the goddamn door," I shouted, smashing my fist into the metal. Nothing. The lights flickered, and in that moment, I heard it again. Not through the speakers this time, but inside my skull. "He loves you. That's not allowed." I spun around. Lila was crying, not soft tears, sobbing. Her hands trembled at her sides. "I didn't mean for this," she whispered. "I just wanted one night, one real night." I took a step toward her. "We'll figure this out. We'll find a way to..." She shook her head violently. "No, Adam, you don't understand. They don't let go. Once they find you, you're theirs." She reached toward me, but as her fingers brushed my chest, they passed through me. Just for a second, like her body glitched, like she wasn't fully here anymore. I staggered back. My skin burned cold where she touched me. "Lila, what's happening to you?" She didn't answer. She just fell to her knees and screamed. A raw animal sound that made the soundboard spark. The mic turned on by itself. The on-air light buzzed to life. And suddenly, the entire booth was filled with voices. Hundreds, maybe thousands, whispering, screeching, chanting. Some in English, most in languages I've never heard. They all said one thing, again and again. "Break the bond, break the bond, break the bond." I covered my ears. "Make it stop." Lila crawled toward me, her eyes wide with terror. "They're going to erase me, Adam. They're going to rip me out of time, out of memory, out of you." I grabbed her shoulders. "No, I won't forget you. I won't let them." And then something inside the speaker cabinet moved. Not a sound, an actual movement. Like something was crawling through the wires, trying to be born from sound. The speaker bulged, groaned, cracked. Something black oozed through the grill, thick, wet, and crawling like it was alive. And then, boom. The power went out. Total blackout. Silence. Not even rain, not even wind. Just the sound of my own heartbeat. And in the darkness, Lila's voice broke through. Not a whisper, a memory. "Promise me if I disappear, you won't let me go." I whispered back, "I promise." I must have passed out. When I opened my eyes, it was morning. The sun bled through the blinds in pale streaks. The studio was empty. No broken glass, no static, no black ooze, just me, curled up on the soundproof floor with bruises on my chest, and Lila's name carved into my skin just above my heart. The board was off. The logs were clean. No record of any broadcast. Except one thing. The mic was still live. And the speaker, the one that had oozed black, was whispering. One word, over and over. Remember. I didn't tell anyone. Who would believe me? I finished my shift like nothing happened. Smiled. Read traffic updates. Played old songs no one remembered. But when I got home, she was there. In the reflection. Not in my room. Not in my bed. In the mirror. She stood behind me as I brushed my teeth, wearing the same white dress, eyes hollow. I turned around. Nothing. I turned back. She was closer, and on the mirror, drawn in condensation from the shower, were 5 words. I'm still yours, Adam. I started sleeping with the lights on, and I started drinking. Heavily. Because every time I closed my eyes, I saw her face. Not the beautiful, soft Lila I fell for. The other one. The real one. The one with the record-cut wrists and the mouth sewn shut with telephone wire. The one that screamed from behind my eyes at 3:06 a.m. every night, like clockwork. And then the dreams started. In one of them, I'm back in the studio, but it's upside down. Literally. The ceiling is the floor, and I'm walking on static. Lila's voice guides me through a hallway made of radio waves, and every time I touch the wall, I hear one of our memories. Her laugh, her moans, her whispers of love. But when I reach the booth, there's a coffin where the chair used to be, and inside it, me, eyes open, mouth wide, a microphone jammed down my throat, broadcasting silence. I wake up screaming, every time. People think radio is dead. They don't realize the old stations, the analog ones, the ones built on forgotten frequencies, are still listening, and sometimes they answer back. I tried quitting, and I really did. I even took a new job, moved to the suburbs, deleted every song that reminded me of her. But I can't stop hearing her voice. Every radio in every room turns on at 3:06 a.m. every time. No matter the brand, no matter the power source, and all it says is, stay with me. I think I'm losing my mind, or maybe I already did, but tonight I'm going back, to RS, to the booth, to her. Because if this is hell, then I want to burn with her. Better that than to forget her. Better that than to be alone. And if she takes me, good. At least I'll never feel this empty again. I slammed my fists against the studio door until my knuckles split. It didn't budge, not even an inch. Outside the glass, that thing, whatever the hell it was, stood frozen like a nightmare carved from darkness. Not moving, not blinking, just watching. Lila clutched my arm, trembling. Her skin felt like frost. Her breath was so shallow it barely moved her chest. What is that? I whispered. Her voice cracked. One of them. One of what, Lila? She looked up at me, eyes glowing faintly in the emergency light that bathed the booth in a sick red hue. The collectors. My mouth went dry. What do they want? She hesitated, then quietly, like confessing a sin. Me. The walls began to hum, a low-frequency sound, like a deep radio signal, tuned just wrong enough to make your teeth itch and your bones vibrate. All the studio monitors flickered static. The control board lights began pulsing in a rhythm, red, white, black, red, white, black, like a heartbeat, losing sync. Lila backed up against the window. Her legs gave out, and she slid to the floor, arms around her knees like a child waiting for punishment. I crouched beside her. We're getting out, I swear. She shook her head. You can't fight a frequency. Her voice was strange, warped, layered, like she was speaking in stereo. My eyes darted around, searching for anything. A crowbar, a chair, something to break the glass. My gaze landed on the mic boom, steel, bolted to the desk. Without a second thought, I ripped the mic from its arm, snapped the screw with all my weight, and raised it like a club. Adam, no. I didn't listen. I ran at the door and smashed the window. It cracked but didn't break. Again and again. Glass shards rained around me. Blood dripped down my wrist from the impact. And on the third hit, it finally shattered. I didn't even hesitate. I reached back for her. But she was gone. Just gone. Like mist in the air. "Lila," I screamed, stumbling back into the room, scanning every corner. Nothing. Only the smell of ozone and static, and that oppressive pressure in the air like gravity had tripled. And then a whisper right in my ear. "I'm sorry." I sprinted out of the booth into the hallway, expecting to find that shadowy thing waiting. But the hallway was empty, dead quiet. No sign of the figure, no lights, just flickering monitors casting harsh strobes across the ancient tile floor. And that smell. Burnt copper, Moldavian, and something worse, like singed hair and wet teeth. I heard the sound of a door creak open down the hall. It wasn't her. I knew it wasn't, but I followed anyway. The break room door was ajar. Inside, the lights were off. I crept forward. My heart pounded so loud it drowned out my thoughts. When I pushed the door open, the room was empty, except for the radio. An old tabletop set, unplugged, sitting in the middle of the table. It buzzed softly, white noise at first. Then something started to tune in. Click, crackle, then her voice. Software, loving, almost musical. "Do you remember the first time you kissed me?" I swallowed hard. "Lila, do you remember the way you looked at me when the rain was falling?" I stepped forward. My knees were shaking. "Yes, of course I remember. What is this?" A pause. Then, "I want you to leave, Adam. Now. Number, I'm not going without you." Silence. "They're inside you now." That stopped me cold. "What? You touched me. You loved me. And now they see you." The radio started to smoke. Sparks snapped off the old dials. And from behind me, a low voice. Not hers. Something else. Something ancient. Broadcast complete. The next thing I remember is waking up in my car, parked outside the station, hands trembling, shirt soaked with sweat. The dashboard clock read 4:06 a.m. I didn't remember walking out. Didn't remember driving. Didn't remember anything after that voice. But in my lap, wrapped in a napkin, was the microphone head, still dripping blood, and beside it, a photograph, old, black and white, a woman in a white dress, standing in the very same booth, smiling, Lila. But across her face, someone had scrawled 2 words in red marker. She lied. That morning I went home and didn't leave bed for 24 hours. My phone rang a dozen times. The station wanted to know why I left the booth unattended. I told them I quit. No explanation. They didn't fight it. But that night, I got a voicemail from a number I didn't recognize. I played it. Only static at first. Then, faintly, her voice. "You loved me, so now you'll hear me forever." And in the background, that same low hum, that frequency, that signal, the one I still hear now, no matter where I go, in the walls, the pipes, the silence. Because when you love something that doesn't belong in this world, it doesn't let go. I haven't stepped inside the station in over a year now. Not since that night. But it never left me. And if you're reading this, if you think this is just some sick Reddit creative writing exercise, I get it. I would too. But you weren't there. You didn't see her. You didn't feel her. You didn't see what followed me home. The first time was a week later. I was staying in a cheap Airbnb near Lakeview, trying to get my life back together, applying for remote jobs, telling myself everything was just some kind of breakdown, PTSD, grief hallucination. Then one night, around 3:06 a.m., I woke up to the sound of static, not coming from the TV, From my phone, my locked phone. It was playing a voice memo that I didn't record. I checked the file. It had no title, no metadata, just 0006 in length. I hit play. It was her voice. "Help me, Adam. They took me below." Then silence. And then the sound of something wet dragging across tile. I tried deleting the file. It wouldn't go. I factory reset the phone. It came back. Again and again. Every night. Always 3:06 a.m. Always 6 seconds. Always her. I started drinking again. Heavily. I couldn't sleep. Couldn't eat. I saw her in reflections. In shadows. In the hiss of static. Every time the TV lost signal. One night, I unplugged everything. No electronics in the room. No signal. And still, I woke up at 3:06 to the sound of her crying, right next to my ear. No source, just air, just grief. I finally gave in. I went back. I had to see it again, confirm what I saw was real. Maybe I needed closure. Maybe I wanted to die. I'm not even sure anymore. But I went. The building was locked, abandoned now. RS-94 had been shuttered just 2 months after I left. No warning, no coverage, no mention of Lila, just silence. But the back door, it was open, like it knew I was coming. Inside, everything looked the same. Same old furniture, same dusty console, same cracked mug I used to drink coffee out of. The only thing missing? Her. I called out for her. "Lila, I'm here, please, talk to me." Silence. Then, music. The old broadcast system, unplugged, cold, dead, started humming. And then her voice. Track 1, for the one I loved. Soft jazz began to play. Something old, 1960s. Vinyl hiss layered over sultry piano. And then she appeared. Not in front of me, in the glass. The window of the sound booth. Her reflection. Perfect. Beautiful. Smiling that sad, tragic smile. I turned around, but no one was there. Just her in the glass. Staring. Frozen. She lifted her hand and pointed down, below the floor. The basement. I'd never been down there before. It was sealed. Always was. I used to joke about it. Told myself it was full of old tapes and rats and asbestos. But that night, the door stood open. And inside, nothing. Just stairs. Old wooden ones. Leading into the pitch black. I followed. Each step creaked. The walls narrowed. The air got colder. I had my phone flashlight, but even that seemed dim, like something was absorbing the light. The stairwell ended in a concrete hallway. And at the end, a steel door. Rusty. Covered in old broadcast stickers. FCC tags. Scratches that looked like claw marks. I opened it. The room beyond wasn't a storage room. It was a studio, but older, much older, like something built in the 1930s, long before RS-94 even existed. Vacuum tube consoles, reel-to-reel decks, microphones big as your head, dust coated everything. And in the center, a single wooden chair with chains on the arms and legs, stained dark. Blood? I didn't want to know. And behind that, a wall lined with tapes, hundreds of them, labeled only with dates, some from the 60s, some from the 40s, and some from the future. 2025, 2026, 2031. I pulled one off the shelf and slid it into the deck. It began to play. And what I heard was screaming. Lila's voice, begging, crying, begging them to let her out, to be free, to find me. And then another voice layered over hers. Mechanical, hollow, inhuman. Payment required. You broke the seal. The contract is blood. I ran. I ran so hard I almost broke my leg on the stairs. I got out of the building and never went back, but I know they're still there. And I know she's still down there, trapped, waiting. And I know one day soon, I'll have to go back, because I still love her. And love, it seems, is the only thing that doesn't die. It's been 3 days since I found the broadcast dated 2031. I haven't slept since. Not because of the nightmares, though they're constant now, but because sleep is no longer safe. Not for me, not for anyone who's heard her voice. Because once you do, you're marked, you're bound, you're property. That's what I've come to understand. What happened that night in the basement, that wasn't the end. It was the beginning, and it wasn't just about me and Lila anymore. They're coming, and I don't think I can stop it. But before I go, before I do what I have to do, I need you to know what happened after I ran. I stayed in a motel out near Skokie for a while. One of those roadside places that smell like bleach and loneliness. I thought maybe putting distance between me and the station would help. Maybe if I never said her name again, never thought of her, blocked it all out. But you can't block out something that's inside you. She was in me. She was part of me now. And not just metaphorically. I started bleeding from my ears. It was thin at first, a trickle of something black and syrupy, but it wasn't blood. I had it tested. The urgent care doctor said it was ferrofluid, magnetic liquid. That's not possible, I told him. He just looked at me like I was the freak. The next night, I vomited up a reel of tape, like actual magnetic cassette tape, unspooling from my throat like a ribbon of nightmare. I pulled out nearly 2 feet before it tore. My mouth bled for hours. I didn't go back to the doctor. The tape wasn't blank. I played it in a friend's old Walkman. It was her, Lila. She was singing, softly, gently. It was that same song from the studio, that old jazz track. But now she was humming along, no lyrics, just that bittersweet melody, like she was remembering what it felt like to be human. And then, under her voice, layered almost too quietly to hear, static. But it wasn't random, it was words. I reversed the audio. It was her again. Adam, don't run. Then a pause. Then something else. They're not done with us. The next day I got a call from a blocked number. I almost didn't answer, but something told me to. It was her, no mistaking it. Track 2, she said. Then the line went dead. I didn't know what it meant. But later that night, while scrolling through Reddit, yeah, I still doom scroll like the rest of you, I saw something that made my blood run colder than anything else so far. A thread, posted only moments before. Title, Who Remembers the Cursed Chicago Radio Broadcast in 1997? I clicked. The OP had posted a link to an old archived radio recording. I pressed play, and I heard me, my voice, reading headlines, telling jokes, introducing music I'd never heard before. I was in a broadcast from 1997, when I was 6 years old, and at the end, Lila's voice, track 2. For the one who stayed. I don't know how they did it, how they recorded me decades before I ever touched a mic. I don't know how she was in that tape before I ever met her. But I've started to understand. Time doesn't work the same way in that basement. Neither does sound, or memory, or love. That basement wasn't built by the radio station. It was found. And everything that's broadcast from there doesn't just go out into the air. It goes somewhere else. Somewhere deep. Deeper than physics. Deeper than hell. I needed answers. Real ones. So I did something I never thought I'd do. I went to see my father. He used to be an engineer for a government contractor. Top secret stuff. He retired after a breakdown in the early 2000s and never talked about what happened. I brought him the tape. Didn't tell him anything. Just asked him to listen. He did. And then he turned pale. Not just pale. Dead. Like something inside him died while the tape played. He looked at me and said 4 words. They opened it again. I asked what he meant. He didn't answer, just went into his garage and shot himself. The obituary says it was depression, but he left a note. Just one sentence. Frequency is invitation. That's when I made my decision. I wasn't going to run anymore. I wasn't going to let them take anyone else. I was going back, but not just to visit, to broadcast, to take it back, to give Lila what she asked for, to end it. I broke into RS 94 last night. The back door was still unlocked. Dust covered everything. The same faint jazz played over the dead speakers. Like the air remembered her voice. I went back to the basement. The air was heavier this time, like it knew what I was planning. The steel door was closed. I opened it. Everything was the same. The chair, the tapes, the console. I sat down. My hands were shaking, but I powered on the equipment anyway. The vacuum tubes glowed orange. The deck spun up. And the mic, that ancient silver mic bigger than my skull, warmed to life. I pressed record, and I spoke. If anyone can hear me, I need you to understand this isn't a story. It's a warning. I don't know how far this signal goes. I don't know what year you're in. But if you're hearing this, it means the door is still open. It means they're still collecting voices, and it means Lila is still trapped. I'm here now, with her, or what's left of her. She doesn't speak anymore, but she listens, and she remembers everything. If you love someone, truly love them, never speak their name near dead air. Never play old tapes in abandoned studios. Never call out to the past. Because if you do, they will answer. And what answers is never what you want it to be. I'm staying here now. With her, I don't think I'll ever leave. I don't think I can. I just want you to know, love doesn't die. It just gets recorded. I finished the message and hit transmit. The signal went out on a loop, just like old times. The console began to shake. The floor beneath me cracked open. I saw the truth then, the real truth. The basement didn't end there. It went deeper, endlessly deeper. Layer upon layer of forgotten broadcasts, each with their own ghosts, each with their own damned voices, all calling out, all screaming, all wanting to be heard. And then, Lila stepped out from the dark. No more reflection, no more static, just her. Solid, real, her eyes wide, her lips trembling. She touched my face and whispered, "You came back." And then she opened her mouth, and I saw the microphone inside. I screamed, but it was too late. She kissed me, and I felt myself recording. My memories, my voice, my soul, all being etched into her, into the air, into the walls, into the signal. So if you're reading this, if you found this post, if your phone's been playing static at 3:06 a.m. every night, if you hear a woman crying in the dark, if your dreams are filled with voices you've never known, begging for you to come back, then you've already been tuned in. They've already found you. There is no off switch. There is no unplugging. There is only the broadcast. There is only the loop. And sooner or later, you'll hear track 3 for you.